Have you ever noticed how the juiciest secrets aren't the ones screaming in the headlines? They're tucked away in the quietest corners, the smallest details most people overlook. That's where this story kicks off, not with Meghan Markle dazzling in her white gown at St. George's Chapel, not even with her walking down that aisle in front of millions, but with something way subtler. Picture this: her mom, Doria Ragland, sitting all alone at the royal wedding. Yeah, alone, in a sea of cameras zooming in from every angle, broadcasting this massive event to the world. One of the most striking images was Doria, in her mint green outfit, sitting solo across from the Queen of England. No cousins, no aunts, no uncles, no family at all around her. Just her, holding her own against the weight of the royal machine. It felt weird, right? It looked weird. And in a family obsessed with every detail of how things appear, nothing happens by accident. So why did the palace, this image-obsessed institution, let this happen? Why was Meghan, who's always talking about family, surrounded by empty pews on her mom's side? That moment wasn't just odd, it was a clue, a hint that something risky, maybe even dangerous, was being kept out of that church. And when you start digging, it leads you to a blank spot in Meghan's family tree. One the palace worked hard to keep hidden. Let's dive into the main character here, Doria Ragland. She's Meghan's mom, a woman who's been in the spotlight but always seems to carry this quiet strength. At the wedding, she was a standout not just for her grace but for how isolated she looked. No one from her side of the family was there, which is wild when you think about how carefully planned royal events are. The palace controls every detail, from the flowers to the guest list. So why let Doria sit there alone? It wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. A signal that inviting more of Meghan's American relatives might have opened a door the royals wanted locked tight. That empty pew wasn't just awkward optics, it was a wall built to hide something big. And that's something, a missing piece in Meghan's family history. A blank space that raises all kinds of questions. When Harry and Meghan got engaged, the British press did what they always do. They rolled out a fancy family tree for Meghan. The royals love this stuff, it's their brand, their proof of legacy, every name and branch neatly laid out. But when people looked at Meghan's chart, something was off. For Doria Ragland, the spot where her mother's name should have been, blank, empty, nada. At first, you might think, okay, maybe it's a typo. Maybe Doria was adopted. Maybe her mom's name just got lost. But then you see it again across different records, different charts, the same blank space over and over. This wasn't a clerical oops, this was on purpose. A deliberate gap in a family history that should have been crystal clear. Why hide a grandmother's name? What's so risky about filling in that one line? Unless that name pointed to something the royals and Meghan didn't want the world to see. That blank space wasn't just a mystery, it was a red flag. It took 8 months after the wedding for the truth to slip out. After all the whispers and speculation, the name finally surfaced. Janet Arnold. Born September 4, 1929, in Sandusky, Ohio. Died December 27, 2000. At 71, a real person with a real life, backed by birth certificates, death records, cemetery listings, and church documents. Once Janet's name came to light, the family tree started filling in fast. Names, dates, connections, it was all there. But here's where things go, from curious to downright chilling. Janet's history didn't just fill in the blanks, it explained why those blanks existed in the first place. This wasn't about adoption or a clerical error. It was about a secret so big it had to be buried. Let's break it down. Janet's dad was James T. Arnold, born in 1909, died in 1939 at just 30. Her mom was Natalie Mae Allen Pritt, born in 1897 in South Carolina, later buried in Los Angeles at 83. On paper, it looks like a typical couple starting a family in the 1920s. But when you map it out, something wild jumps out. Natalie Mae's mom was a woman named Gertrude Elizabeth Sadler. And guess who James T. Arnold's mom was? The same Gertrude Elizabeth Sadler. Yeah, you read that right. Both of Janet's parents shared the same mother. They weren't cousins or distant relatives, they were half-siblings, brother and sister by blood. That's why Janet's name was scrubbed from the records. Because putting her parents' names side by side reveals something shocking. Janet Arnold, Meghan's grandmother, was allegedly the child of a relationship between a half-brother and half-sister. This is where the story gets explosive. According to the records, Janet Arnold's birth was tied to incest. Not the, oh, they were distant cousins, that was normal back then kind of thing. No, this was closer half-siblings, a relationship that's never been legal in the US, even back in the day. The documents don't hint, they spell it out. Janet was born from a union between two people who shared a mother. Now, for legal reasons, we have to say alleged, but the records aren't vague. Birth certificates, census data, cemetery records, they all line up, telling a story most would rather keep buried. And that's why the palace freaked out. When Harry and Meghan got serious, the royal family did their usual deep dive into her background. Every royal bride gets the full investigation, family history, skeletons in the closet, the works. It's all about protecting the monarchy's image. So imagine the moment they traced Meghan's family tree and hit this bombshell. Her grandmother, Janet was allegedly the product of incest. This wasn't just about embarrassment, it was about risk scandal if it leaked. Questions about genetics if kids were in the picture, and a massive hit to the royal brand, which thrives on looking flawless despite its own messy history. Their solution: silence. Wipe Janet's parents from public records. Keep Doria isolated at the wedding so no chatty relatives could spill to the press. Those empty pews weren't random, they were a strategy to hide a secret already uncovered in old records. But here's the real kicker. The scandal isn't just the secret itself, it's the cover-up. Powerful families don't fall because of mistakes from decades ago, they fall because of the lies built to hide them. The palace could have owned the truth, but instead, they left that blank space in Meghan's family tree. That choice screams fear, proof they thought hiding it was safer than facing it. For Meghan and Harry, this shadow looms large. Every move they make, every interview, every time Doria steps into the spotlight, it's colored by what the palace knew. For the royals, it's another test of their survival skills. They've dodged affairs, divorces, even abdications. But this, a secret like this in a royal bride's bloodline, that's the kind of thing they'd do anything to keep buried. So, we're left with questions that hit harder than the answers. Why hide the names? If the truth was bound to come out, why let Doria sit alone, drawing even more attention? And if this secret, buried for years, is now out in the open, what else might still be hiding in Meghan's past? Because that's how big families crumble, not from the secret itself, but from the silence that surrounds it. Meghan walked into the royal world carrying more than her own story. She carried a bloodline the palace fought to erase. And as history shows, it's never the secret that does the most damage, it's the silence that follows.